Welcome to the Optimized Legacy Applications and Structured Date conference call. My name is Anna, and I will be your operator for today's call. I will now turn the call over to Michael Downs. Michael, you may begin.
Thank you, Anna. Welcome. This is our fourth webinar in our series of disruptive technology presentations. I'm Michael Downs. I'm a solution architect with Evolving Solutions. I appreciate you all taking the time with us again this week to spend some time talking about some of the trends we're experiencing with our clients. That's part of what we put this series together for. One of the things that I've had quite a few conversations with clients about is the way that their analytics strategy has them retaining a lot of data. I mean, the basic philosophy is keep it all. And that becomes a challenge, especially as you have older ERP and CRM systems that maybe have been migrated off of, but you still need to retain for compliance reasons or for reasons of reporting or big data. So one of the things I thought would be helpful was to get on the phone with Dave Welch. Dave's the Worldwide Optum Center of Excellence leader for IBM, and so he deals with this kind of thing every day. So we wanted to have him come on and talk to us today. Generally, we've had trouble getting to questions on these sessions because they're a little shorter. We want to make sure you've got time to finish up your lunch and get back to other things. If you do have questions, please go ahead and post them in the chat. I'll do my best to hand them over to Dave, and if for some reason we don't get to them during the call, we'll be sure to follow up with you. So I hand the call over to Dave and look forward to hearing what you've got to share with us.
All right, great. Hello, everyone. Let me get to my first slide. There we are. So David Welch, like I was introduced, manager of the Worldwide. That means I see customers using the Optum technology around the world, up from some of the largest mainframe systems out there to people run the entire operation on the Windows PC to do archiving. So we see everything. And just to start, Optum has three pillars. Archiving is one, test data management, and data privacy are the three pillars. We're going to focus today on Optum archiving solutions. Okay? There we go. So if you look at the three pillars from just the archiving solution, Optum archiving does a very nice job working on these three pillars: costs, application performance, and then, of course, risk and compliance. In today's world, we spend a lot of time with risk and compliance questions. The nice thing about your Optum solution is that it does a very good job with cost and performance, which are, of course, key to the data center. Right? So those are the pillars inside. We're going to address all three of those over this presentation in as much detail as we can. So let's just take those down to one more level. It's just some of the basic challenges you're probably very familiar with, everybody on the line. But let's go through this briefly. Absolutely, storage is getting more expensive. Even though the price is going down, the volumes of data are going up, right? And what we're going to address today is not just storage, cheap storage, tier 3, tier 4. We're talking about production storage, the storage that runs underneath those production transaction systems. So it's just not the cost of, let's say, the drives themselves. It's the cost of maintaining them. It's the DVA time. It's all the above, right? That's where it gets expensive, not so much the cost per terabyte. And then we go to application performance. It's not, and let's drill into that because that's an important one. If application performance covers so many things, I don't even have time to cover it all. But if you think about application performance, it's transactional performance, of course, but it's also how about your batch window at night to run your reports. It's the time to run your backups. So so performance covers many different areas, and we'll try to drill into those a little bit more. But that's exactly what we're talking about. And performance also, for example, it's the classic ways to I spend a little bit of time with CRM systems. And those transactions, if it takes 3 or 4 seconds to get an answer back, or 8 in a complicated SQL query, versus just sub-second response time, we can get those call center agents off the phone tremendously faster, and every organization can drill that down into an exact cost. So there's that type of performance, but there's obviously more to it. Then risk and compliance. That's where I think in today's world of big data, I'm going to address all these issues, but I think today one of the problems is in archiving, it's a misused term, okay? I believe it's a misused term because you see it everywhere, and it tends to skip over risk and compliance. And I'm going to spend time with that today. I'm not going to read through the slides. You see the statistics, but let's take this down to another level. All right. So of course, let's get the definition of archiving on the table, and what we're going to talk about today. All right. So in today, we have production data. It's out there. It is expensive. It's expensive to manage, and you might have 7 years, 10 years, 15 years, or possibly you've got a production application system that's just been too hard to archive the data off because it is intertwined. It is linked to other systems. And you're not sure if you delete out of one transactional system that's growing very rapidly, you're not sure if you're going to create any kind of problems with the other systems that are linked in to this one large transactional system. I'm going to address that today. But again, to that system, it has a lot of data that's out there. So if you look at I'll read through this with you. Data archiving is the intelligent process, right? Intelligent meaning we're not going to corrupt any data. We're going to do the right thing. Moving inactive or infrequently accessed data still has value while providing the ability to search and retrieve the data, right? So we're going to delete it out of production. We're going to move it into a format of much easier to manage, least expensive that we can find, all right? But the key point, if there's line of business people on the phone, we're not going to take that away where you can't get to it or put it into a system that you have to wait months to retrieve it. That's not what we're going to do here. So we're going to create a universal access that we all know, a SQL interface, to that data. And let's not forget, so there's a lot of questions I get all the time. What if I archive too much? Well, of course, it takes planning to do these things. But the point is, if you do archive off too much, what you can see right here is we can put it back in. That's not necessarily what I recommend, and we'll get to that in a minute. But there's always that option because we do a good job. It's an intelligent process. We can move it out and put it back in. But basically, if you have, for example, 12 years, and your auditors and the legal people say, it's got to be in production for 5 years, then it needs to migrate to a system where we can have access to it for more years and all these kind of good things, right? All right, so let's drill into this a little bit more. Now we've got archiving on the table. There we go. All right, so let's drill into those, that third pillar, if you will, back to the data retention, litigation hold, and defensible disposal, okay? These are important. This is what's being missed in a lot of archiving talks today. A lot of people just say, take it out of production, stick it over there in big data, and we'll have it there forever. I actually hear that quite a bit. But let's drill into this. There's much more to it, okay? Litigation hold is important, right? What that means is I've got data out there, and I take it out of production. So my production database is not just compressed, right? So it's smaller. The data is out of there. And you get all these, your batch times, all these operational issues, tremendous. It's a huge win factor for IT and operations to move that data out of there. And secondly, now we're saying, okay, possibly, and most of the time I see the users of that data changes, right? When you take it out of production and move over here, the users could be marketing, especially legal. Don't throw into the legal part. And today we have this thing called litigation hold. So if in 8 years there is a lawsuit where you have to hold that data, but that data is being targeted to be deleted after 10 years, and this lawsuit goes on for 5, you do not want that to be automatically deleted. So you have to have an archiving system that when it puts it out there, then puts disposal on it of 10 years or 12 years. Obviously, if you're running a nuclear power plant, you might have 100 years, but there are dates out there that make sense to have it deleted from these systems, not just production, but the archiving system. And then if that legal hold passes that has to be tracked, has to be labeled, and that record has to be secure. Okay, so that's basically litigation hold, but it's very important. Your auditors and your attorneys and all these people out there that are doing this, that is utmost on their minds. Okay, and defensible disposal, that makes it sense. That's pretty self-reasoning, and you can read through these slides. I'll move on here. Okay, so questions. I always like to say on this slide that archiving is pretty much the 80-20 rule. 80% of your time will be spent asking questions and answering questions. Only 20% of your time will be in the tool itself. So this is the classic 80-20 rule. And just some things to consider. These are high-level questions. These are not the 300 and 400 questions that you need to be answered in a phase 1 implementation. Okay, these are some high-level things, but you got to understand where we're headed with archiving. So the classic question is, how long should it be saved? For how long? For what reason? This is important because you can put it out there in marketing after 10 years, put it out there in big data, put it out there in Hadoop. You can do these things, but there are other questions. There's legal issues. There's government. There's state issues. For example, in India, all call detail records coming off the switch have to be held for 7 years. That's just a requirement that has to be met. So what are you going to do to respond to that? It's the same thing here. But the reason you need a tool and not hand-coded because you need the flexibility to get new laws, new regulations, and apply those as rapidly as you can to your infrastructure. Okay? And then how am I going to find the data when I need it? That's obviously important, not just from line of business, again, but from those e-discovery measures. Okay? And ensure the preservation of data for e-discovery and audit needs. So that has to be built in, right? What do you do with data that is no longer needed? Define that. Is it deleted where? Is it moved to somewhere else? Very important to get these questions answered and get a lot of people involved, right, to answer these questions from the different needs throughout the enterprise. All right? Okay, appropriate solution and the cost benefit. I always like to say that one of the reasons I like working with this solution is that it does have a very good ROI, a very good ROI. And that's important because a lot of times, the IT in today's world, there's a security issue, there's an audit issue, and you have to do it no matter what. It's adding costs. Every year your costs are going up. It is just great to find a solution that does have an ROI that can decrease your costs while it's increasing application performance and taking care of some legal requirements. So let's go back to those pillars again. Reducing those costs. I always like to say, all right, so you have a big server, and it's the data inside, those transactional systems, the structured data. And I'll take time right now to say we are focusing on structured data. In today's world, you have semi-structured, unstructured. What I like to talk about, this is the structured data that's underneath your transactional systems that the operations people are focused on today. We can talk about marketing and your other systems, if it's Netezza or Teradata. Those are getting expensive today, and those also need archiving, right? What I'm talking about here is underneath those big server systems that if you can take out the data and you can take out the CPU time in those batch windows, think about just for a second, think about the question of, can I delay a server upgrade? Can I just push out a production storage purchase for 6 months? So, for example, if you have 12 years of data in production, but you shrink it down to 5 years, so what you're doing is you're taking it from that high-priced storage, you're moving it to a compressed flat file sitting on a very low-cost device for e-discovery, something to that effect. Okay? That is not going to just decrease your cost, but it's going to open up a tremendous amount of potential. Your batch jobs now start making the batch window with time to spare, possibly. Right? So on and on about reduced cost, right? It's MIPS, it's storage, it's the DVA time to manage all that and all those other costs. Improving performance, we talked about that already. This is near and dear to my heart because I actually was a customer of IBM before I started working at IBM. So these operational issues are absolutely important on how we can get out there and improve those transactional systems. So that the line of business want to see those improvements, and they want to see things, right? So we'll get into that maybe a little more. And of course, the risk involved. We have to have safety. We have to have the legacy of redundant applications. We want to get rid of those things and put them in a very secure environment. All right? All right, so let's move forward. Now, I'll go back one slide. The key to this bullet, number 2, discovery and identify record types to archive across heterogeneous environments. So bullet number 2 in this slide. Well, let's drill into that one. And that one is, do you understand your data? Remember we talked about the 80-20 rule, that 80% of think time. Well, a lot of this has to do with, well, first you have to make decisions about the data, who's going to be the owner, how long do you retain it, and many things. But at the same time, well, let's understand our data. And I'll just lay this out here for you. Today's world, people think they understand their data, but usually they don't. It's amazing. You buy a packaged application that's database independent. What does that mean? That means that the logic, the data, the primary foreign keys in the data, how it's put, is up in the application. It's not in the database itself anymore. So you might have a homegrown, a really nice application where the primary foreign keys, you can go to the database catalog and you can find what you need to know. There's data out there where you don't. And if you even have a mainframe application that might be more than 20, 25 years old, then again you're going to have what's that written in, where's the logic, and how does this all tie together? So you have to understand your data. And that discovery is absolutely critical to get you started. And it also takes a lot of time. So we can also discuss about implementation time and implementation costs. And we need to have a tool that can help us with these questions. With this, to shrink the implementation time, we have to shrink it down. We have to have something that can find these relationships and then put them in, and then we can act on them and make decisions on them. All right, so we have a product here that comes bundled with Optum that does just this. And this is not far-fetched. This is what happens today. So when you archive data, you just don't want to archive a record in a transactional system. That actually would make possibly no sense in 5 years or 3 years or 7 years for e-discovery. You want to put together what we call a business object. That business object that makes sense down the road, the business view that just popped up here, that snapshot of what happened with that transaction. That might mean inventory system on DB2 that's on Z, because that is the key to your business, is that type of transaction system. At the same time, it might make sense to get some data out of your CRM system, possibly a purchase system like Siebel or something on Oracle. And then we've got the financials out there and other applications running on open systems on DB2. And I could throw in Sybase. In the multiple, the solution is very flexible on all these different databases. It'll be hard to find a database that we can't connect to and create this business object. Okay, so then when we archive this off, we do have, a referentially intact subset of data that is a snapshot of business activity at that time, and we're putting that in that archive file. Okay, that is key to an archiving system that works. Okay, so I put this up to, again, accelerating project point. This is a cost. When you want to do this right, this is a cost. The other way to look at this too is it's just not going to be on production systems, right? You have other auxiliary systems. So when you start archiving, this is going to be around for a while, because it's kind of like it's going to have its fingers in all your applications. Because when you might start with a visible system that needs to be archived, that you need to have operational issues that have to be addressed. But then once that's done, the low-hanging fruit, where the largest ROI is, then we're going to go to other systems that need to be worked on and tuned and make everything better. But that's going to happen, right? So this is going to go on for a while. And in those implementations and those phases in a larger implementation, you want those to go fast as we can, and IBM will help you with those tools. That's just more on the business object. We'll go past that. Now, let's see. complete business object. This just is will show you what has to be done. And the production databases that we described is more of a visual look of archiving the data, the complete business object. And one thing I'd also like to say is that you might say, well, wait a minute. In my application, especially if you're a line of business person, you say, well, I don't want to go to a separate system to look something up. Wonder if, yes, it makes sense to archive data out of my CRM system. But wonder, if let's say I delete it in 3, 4, 5 years, but in 6 years, that customer comes back. And maybe you'll have a discount for a returning customer, or there's a line of business, there's a requirement out there to look at that older data. These archive files are accessible by those applications. In many of our packaged applications where we have predefined templates, there's actually a screen in there that can then say, especially Siebel, PeopleSoft, these packaged apps on top of Oracle, you can go out and look at that archive data as if it was still in the production database. But this is infrequently used data, very, very seldom used, so it makes sense. But those business requirements are put into an archiving. So we archive off the business object. We still have at the core that transactional data, which they can be used by production applications, though the data is not in that very expensive production environment. So again, Pete. All right, so let's drill into some of our costs. We talked about storage. And the other thing, too, if it's just not so, remember I talked about that it's the DBA time to manage those systems. Well, it's not that. It's also the DBA time that it takes to take old, let's say, you have to take the backup tapes. You have to lay down the older data, and then that's used for e-discovery. So if someone comes to the data center, to IT, and says, I need this data due to these factors, this lawsuit, and they give you the parameters, that takes a lot of time, right? And you can ask any DBA out there, and that's how it is. That was what I did in one of my previous lives. And also, one of the things to remember in the IT operations world, or even IT just trying to address line of business requirements, you have a list of projects that need to be done. If you have a project management office, a PMO, and you have that, you have all your project plans out there, and you're running reports against an enterprise-wide project planning system. Microsoft has one, CA has one. There's some really nice systems out there to run a project management office on. So you run your reports, and almost always, nothing's ever 100% in IT, but a lot of times, your key resource to getting more projects implemented to support the line of business is a DBA's time. That tends to be the bottleneck in these things. So I've just talked about managing systems, laying the data down and everything. But let's say again, we're not doing that anymore. We're taking that data and we're putting it out here on a system with SQL access. It's compressed. It's immutable. It's in a very secure place. And I'll tell you in a minute how we lock it down at another level with security. And then you could say, go for it. And that self-service frees up DBA time. So we're talking about a couple things here, right? I've mentioned decreasing costs. I've mentioned production issues. Now we're talking about the costing as far as storage. And I'm also at this point bringing up that DBA time. It's kind of a fuzzy cost, right? It's hard to say. But if you have the right system, you could say, you know what? I might have 3 or 4 DBAs, and I might have 40, 50, 60 application programmers. But if I can take my DBAs, and if I can get back 10, 15, 20%, maybe 50% of one man's time, and let him work on these other projects, if you have the right project management system, you can go down through and say, I can get these features in for the line of business, and I will tell you right now, they probably have a dollar sign allocated to those projects. So from an IT point of view, this is the right thing. That's self-service. Get that DBA out of it. Now let's go down here and say, Well, I got my high performant and higher cost for this out here, this data, right? And I can move it to maybe a reporting database in 3 or 4 years. Line of business says, it's really frequently addressed more than we say, right? So we want it out there. Then you get to 5 or 6 years, then we could just have it automatically moved. Tivoli Storage Manager is great at this kind of thing. If you get Optum and you get Tivoli Storage Manager, then it will then move these to lower and lower cost to this multi-level. But I want to say one thing here, that a high percentage of implementations that I've seen around the world usually have a 2-tier strategy, because I'm going in somewhere and that production database just has to be decreased a lot right now to get my ROI, to get my projects going. So they're going to go from, let's say, the first column to the 4th column. We're going to move it like that. Okay, so that's going to be 2-tier. But if you get sophisticated and you get a little bit extra hardware and software in there, then we can put in something like this, which then makes the end users more successful. So that the decision on moving the data out of production gets easier if you have a reporting system for people to look at, that maybe there are 200 analysts that want to see that old data, but they don't want to go with the transactional system. So we can do that. Then we move it on to the flat file system. We support ENC Centera. I talked about Tivoli Storage Manager. We support other interfaces to help us with these things, right? And then if it gets to 7 years or 10 years, then we can push it out to some, virtual tape. There's all kinds of great stuff out there that can just sit and we can hang on to it. But you notice here, what I've done is there's an arrow there, right? There's an arrow then, well, do we delete it now or not? That's important. And possibly what we might say at this point is, remember, this data has Social Security numbers, emails. It has personal data in here. So we want it to be compressed, immutable in these files. But remember I talked about earlier, there's all these thoughts about, well, we have to stick it out there in big data. We want to keep, the marketing goes, we want to keep it forever. And we want to do multi-generational marketing. Well, okay, so what do we do? So we have to take care of our legal holds. We have a lot of things we have to do. But then at the end of the day, maybe even in years 3 or 4, we put it in archiving and we handle it there. But at the same time, we might want to move it out there into big data. So that's kind of where I'm headed with this is there is the new world out there, Hadoop. Hit the right button. There we go. There's a new world out there. And that is, okay, I've defined all these systems, my ERP system, my CRM system. I've defined this stuff, and now I want to put it out there in my big data platform. It could be Hadoop. It could be multiple places, right? Multiple technologies. But let's just put it out there so we can do that. But what we give you is if you remember back at the start, I talked about the 3 pillars. Optum has archiving, it has test data management, and data privacy. Well, data privacy comes into play a lot in today's world. I actually have questions from customers. Sometimes it's just about they want to do data privacy across the enterprise, and we just focus on that today. Where years ago we just did archiving and test data management, and data privacy was underneath those, was a supporting function. But today, it has now become sometimes a lead function. And the other two are just parts of that data privacy. I have ATL tools that's pushing data around the enterprise. I have all these things, and I need to mask that data. It's as people drill into it, I want to do masking everywhere. But that masking everywhere also includes big data. So in your thinking, in that 80-20 again, and in your think time, we want to talk about, at the end of a certain period of time, you want to push it into, let's say, Hadoop. Or maybe when we archive, we also want to put it in Hadoop. But you know what? We don't want to have Social Security number and personal email, all that personalized data that, especially if you're in healthcare, you have HIPAA, tremendous amount of laws and regulations on that. So maybe as we archive it, we then want to mask it and then put it into Hadoop, for example, and big data. So then we can start running those queries. We can start asking those questions and then getting answers to those questions on things we never tried before. I don't know if the group, where you're all from, there's healthcare, there's looking at cause and effect, there's looking at that. Also manufacturing. One of the great parts is archiving data off of, let's say, a warranty system. We archive it off so our production systems are running great. Because warranty systems, you think about it, yes, they do have a time horizon, right? But your engineers then want to see it for another couple of years to make decisions. But really, not that far down the road, this warranty data we can then put into Hadoop. But then when it's there, if you look at this picture, the great part about this new world is then we can say, we've got this, for example, a bearing going out on combines. Obviously, I've talked to a maker of those combines, and they said, well, it's a huge cost, these warranty costs. What can we do? They're going to start asking questions on why is this bearing going out on the combine? Well, if we add in temperature, right, because that might be the first thing. So let's overlay this new world with that archive data, and let's lay over the temperature data. Well, we didn't get an answer. Well, then let's overlay the soil types. Then all of a sudden, we have a hit. Ding, ding, ding. We have a hit now that we find that, guess what? Where those bearings are going out in those combines, right? And we look at the zip codes. We get this granularity. We look at the heat. It's sandy soils. So a simple plastic cover is going to save millions and millions of dollars on a warranty system. Okay? So that's how today, like I said, a lot of people out there will say, just take your data, delete it in production, and throw it out there and ask these new questions and get the answers you look at. It could be in healthcare. It could be in manufacturing. Tremendous amount of great things, right? You might just want to do some research on your customer base as you take it out of your CRM system, right? So the benefit is there. So when you talk about archiving today, what I wanted to talk about today was there is still the fact that you have legal hold. You have other issues that need to be resolved. You have think time. So we're going back to that think time question again, which I brought up. We're going to move this data down the road, and we're going to get it out there and be part of this new world. So archiving has its place, and it goes to where we can get to go. Right? That's all important. That's just all about to get it out there and ask the new questions and get those answers to add tremendous amount of value to the company. So we play that. And I just want to say, don't forget the data privacy aspect as it goes out there. Obviously, your legal people want the real data. It cannot be messed. That makes sense. But when we stick it out there on your big data platform with a lot of analysis being done, or stick it up there in the cloud, things change. That's all I'm saying today. There's a lot of questions to be asked there, but that is that information lifecycle management, right? Lifecycle of that structured data. We need to address that. We need to have it. We have the tools here. Just laid it out for you. The tools to get it out there and end it up there in your big data. Okay, at the end of the day. All right. Now, the last key point is for line of business people out there, right? It's just a line of business people and also application developers. People that will view things differently. So things will change. When we start to take data out of production, we start moving it into these other levels, these other tiers of storage, if you will, or retention policies, procedures that are out there. They'll start to change. So your application, we need something that's application and independent, that if you want to write an application or something new down the road comes up, these Optum archive files are again, they're compressed, immutable. The great part about it is they can be addressed through the Optum engine. We can send out just a standard SQL query and retrieve that data. Okay? So this is all very important, what we do. So third-party reporting tools, Data Explorer, any ODBC, JDBC application, these things can get at that data. This data is not locked up. It is secure, right? That's it. All the right things is where it is secure, but this is very important, okay? This slide right here, I can talk for a bit, but this is the important stuff, okay? And then the ad hoc queries. The ad hoc queries. You might say, again, remember, let's talk about that DBA's time, to restoring data or giving somebody access to data because there is a question that needs to be answered from, it could be a line of business, it could be e-discovery, but when it's out there in these files, it's very straightforward. You can have LDAP security. Security is very robust in Optum and against these files, and we'll get into more about that in a second, right? They can be set on the drive, they can be monitored, and all these good things. But at this point, it's ad hoc queries with the right user access. So don't forget that. This has to be secure. Okay, it's out there. So all these SQL query tools, it can be anything. It could be Excel with the SQL query tools with the proper security to get in there and look at that data. Okay? All this is very straightforward. And, of course, we have our own tools. We have Cognos. We have all these other things that are absolutely integrated in the solution. But I'm just talking about you probably have something in place. Line of business today, usually by today, right, by now, by this period of time in IT, they have their own favorite tool. So my point on this slide is we will let them use their favorite tool to do the research they need to look at this data. That's what comes across. We're not trying to change their favorite tool or all these other things. We're just saying, here it is. It's right there. All right, so leverage the very accent methods. It's another slide, kind of goes to the same thing. We talk about the third-party tools. Native application interface. I touched on that briefly. Want to make sure that's truly understood. I have been in shops. Actually, it was a small insurance company in the Midwest. It was small. And every time they upgraded this packaged application, they kept the old release because the user said that's how they can find the data. So though they did try to shrink down the data to move forward for the next release, they kept the old. So let's say version 6 was there. Then they upgraded to version 7. They upgraded to version 8. Version 7 was running. Believe it or not, they were going to upgrade to version 9. And version 8, they were going to leave running out there so end users can get at that data. These are actually cases I go out and talk to people, and this is what they've done. Okay? Because they said, well, wait a minute. I understand the interface. I know how to get to the 5 screen. I can bounce between screens to get at it. So if you think about it, right, there's this server out there, and we want to make these servers efficient to drive transaction speeds and volumes. So this doesn't make a lot of sense to have this in the right world, right? To still have those out there. Let's talk about that. At the same time, your line of business people are going to say, but I need, just in case that person comes back in 7 years, I have to get at it. So native application interfaces to those things for packaged apps. And of course, we can put it in your custom build app too. All right? Very straightforward, easy to use. Right? So those examples play out there. So we have to be cognizant of running the business. We have to make sure the line of business understands their data is available, but it might change, right? It might go from the 5, 6, 7 screens they're used to in release 6 and 7 of this application to your favorite query tool. And it's a lot of times when we do pilots, it's just this transition, this way of thinking has to be sold to the line of business people. They have to have access to the data. So a lot of times that's what we do in a pilot is we move the data out from, let's say, a test system out there. We're showing them how it works. We're getting everything built. The number one thing is we then have, okay, line of business people, here's your tool. We've created the access. Now you can get to it. So this right here is native application access if it needs to be there out there. And right now, I'll talk about one more thing that I think is relevant here. And we talked about the efficiency of the production server. That can be a mainframe or a large Unix server, right? It's a production server. And especially the mainframe, excuse me, we have a lot of applications out there that are old, that people keep around for the same reason. So if we can get off those applications and archive them off. So what we call that, I call it when you archive off everything from an old application is called decommissioning. So decommissioning applications on a big server plays here. And you talk about a great ROI. And one of the large telcos, they're saving over $100,000 per year for every application that they decommission off of their large servers. So again, we're talking about that ROI and freeing up resources, that entire process. This is extremely important. So archiving was our topic today, but I want to spend a little bit of time on decommissioning because in just simple high-level terms, it's archiving off everything. We're decommissioning that application. And that so if we go back to that example, that small insurance company, we decommissioned off version 6, we decommissioned off version 7, and we decommissioned off 8. And actually, another thing to think about here as far as cost savings, if you have packaged applications, one of your cost drivers, or one of the things, one of the important items you need to address in that upgrade to the next version are the batch database jobs that have to be run to get you that upgrade. Okay? So I've been to a lot of shops, and they say, the last time I upgraded this system, it took me 2.5 days, and I really only have 2 days to do this upgrade. I have 1 weekend. So if I do start, Friday night at 10, and I run all weekend, I bring things down, I upgrade this application, I have to have it back up Monday morning by 7 o'clock, or it's critical to the line of business. I get this upgrade done on time. And last time, I almost didn't make it, right? Any hiccup at all, and I'll be in trouble here. And that was, 3 years ago. I have more data. And the key component to those upgrades are those batch jobs to convert that data to the next data model. Well, let's do this. As part of an application upgrade, let's archive before we do the upgrade. Let's archive it off. Let's get our rules. Let's do our take time. Let's do it now. Let's archive it off. Then we do the upgrade. And guess what? We're going to work this so we know how long it took before. We know how much data was in there. If we have less data, and we have faster boxes, and all this good stuff, we think this is going to run much better. So again, when you do archiving, sometimes it's very important to do it when you're thinking about an upgrade. That is absolutely important. Even if you're going to consolidate companies, upgrade all these different functions, some of the largest jobs are those batch jobs. Those batch jobs running against your data. So archiving has more places out there in other use cases, if you will, as we move this thing forward. All right, so I think one more time. So I want to end with security. I'm very big on security. So let me restate. These are flat files that they're compressed with our compression. No one else is supposed to know these things. And it's immutable, so they can't get to it. It's because they hold the data, Social Security numbers and so forth. Has to be there. So the one more layer of security on those archive files is what we use here at IBM is Guardian, industry-leading security package that's out there that can monitor our archive files. They can monitor your production databases, right? And a lot of people are looking at it for just that. They also, if it's in there, will totally fit into your existing security structure, and we can use Guardian to lock down those files. It's another level, another layer of security, and I think that's very important. All right, so I'm right at 45 minutes. So in conclusion, data growth reduces hardware. Remember I said, think about it in the concept of, can I skip an upgrade? Can I skip some storage and some data? Because I already have all that production stuff, and I decrease it. What can I do? It's a very high-level conversation, but it gets you thinking in the right direction. Okay? So, again, operational issues, batch jobs, batch windows, disaster recovery. One of the things I talk about is if the database does go down, the production database goes down, how many minutes or hours will it take to bring that database back online? How much business would be lost? If we archive that off, that would be another operational concern that will be much smaller. we go from maybe 2 hours or 3 hours theoretically down to possibly minutes. Okay? There's many things about backup recovery and operational issues that this stuff helps. And then, of course, data retention, the safety. Hopefully I've addressed that at a higher level, but any further questions, let us know. So, again, thank you for your time, and I'll turn it back over to the team.
Thanks, Dave. I really appreciate it. That perspective of being able to really archive in the context of the application, gives a different perspective than maybe a traditional archive of just pulling things onto tape and then being able to still access it and still be able to do the things with it with your application you might normally do. If you could flip one more slide for me. I want to thank everybody for joining the call today. I really appreciate your attendance and attention to these calls over the last few weeks. We really appreciate it. I would, in intending to continue to have some of these conversations, if you've got input about what you'd like to hear, topics you'd like us to cover, or speakers you'd like to have us join, please email me or connect on the website or call me directly. I'll be very happy to hear from you and see what we can have available for you. We did record this. The webinar replay will be available by the end of the day today on our website, as will the presentation. And I thank you all very much for your attendance. I hope you have a good day. Anna?
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may now disconnect.